well. No wonder the aircon wasn't working properly. Well, we've got the alternator out and the brush assembly is looking a bit thick. There's a bit left. I'm going to try and replace the brush and reg assembly. It's a big 140 amp Bosch. Yeah, 14 volt, 25, 140 amp. Pretty decent size one. Slip rings are a bit crook, but they'll work. A nice step worn in the active one. We'll get it to last as long as we can. The bearings aren't short. We're giving the old motor a clean up just before disassembly. Power steering pump's still alright, and the water pump will take off and decide on that one. That was replaced just before I got the car, but it's 30,000 miles old and had some rather nasty coolant through it, so I don't know whether we'll use it. But apart from that, this thing's just suitable for rebuild only. Obviously take the starter and other shit off it. And that's it. Chuck the other one in. Okay, well the engine's pretty much ready to go back in. All new ignition leads, plugs, new drive belts, cleaned up the crank angle sensor and checked that out. Alternator, I'm still going to try and find a new rectifier and brush assembly for it. Well, not rectifier, regulator. And we'll just chuck this thing in and see how it runs. Should be a pretty reasonable engine. In the meantime, I'll restore the old one. Yeah, that's what a dirty, abused BMW injector looks like. Well, actually made by Bosch. That's one of my old injectors. Still work just fine. There's nothing wrong with the bottom end of this engine, it's just the cooling gallery corroded out. But it still needs a good clean. Yeah, this is one of the injectors from the replacement engine. It's a 4-point atomizer injector. More efficient, more power. Pretty nice little unit. I only pulled this one out because the O-ring on the injection rail was leaking a bit, so I'll do the O-rings on them. And this is the old type of injector from my old engine. Single jet, not as efficient or effective as the 4-point atomizers. This is probably the original factory thing from 20 years ago. I don't think they've ever been replaced. But these ones are good. The 4 little injection points on the nozzle compared with the single conical injection point. There we go. The engine is filling the hole. Now we just have to get the little round thing on the torque converter to insert into the hole in the back of the engine. There we go. Nearly there. Gonna go down a little bit. Okay, well we're nearly ready for a test run tomorrow morning. Still got to put some other ancillary stuff on, but we'll at least fire it for a few seconds and see what she does. Got all the wiring in, new belts and everything. We're just working on the fuel system now and replacing hoses. That's the fuel tank access point there. Fuel pump and level connector. That's the top of the fuel pump there. Low pressure return and high pressure, which has just been replaced. Down in there is the old fuel filter, the canister. That's got to come out, and we replace the rubber hoses as well. Check the brake rotors and they're all up to scratch. Good pads. You can see the contents of the old fuel filter. Yeah, that was colourful. Can't really get that, but yeah, you get the idea. It's not very friendly. It's an old filter too.
In-ground tank contaminant.
Yeah, cheap petrol stations. Okay, well that's the auto trans pan that we've dropped. I'm going to do the gasket and filter. And you can see the magnets are covered in a very fine metallic sludge from years of use. It's not bad, but it's definitely due for service. This is the inside of the auto trans. The grey thing there's the filter. That silver thing there is the main valve body. Can't really see much else. There's some control wires and things. That's the old oil filter. There's a gauze screen inside. You can see some tiny little particles on it. Not too bad. It's just got clutch powder, or yeah, wear friction powder from the clutches built up on it, just like the grey stuff in the sump. This is the sediment from the automatic transmission pan mixed with some carburetor cleaner. I'm just using a pickup magnet to move the filings and dust around. Really pulls it out of solution. There's a lot of crud in the bottom there. Try and pull it around on the side. That's just from normal operation too. Not good for your years. That's why you should service an auto. There you go. See that? That's heaps. I've got that pan all cleaned up, a new gasket, new filter. The transmission seal itself is for Jaguar XJ40, but it's a generic 4-speed ZF gearbox, so they all fit the same. Probably cheaper. Didn't bother pricing a BMW part since V8 Jag nut obviously is a Jag nut and has connections for Jaguar stuff, cheap. Okay, well we just did a first fire, although I didn't have the camera running at the time. She seems to be clearing herself out. Oil pressure still hasn't come up because the system's completely dry, but that should come up next time. And we've just dumped the auto trans fluid so that we can get rid of the remains of the old stuff. That's the most important thing in the service for the trans.